I'm with Manish Tiwari, the freshly minted MP from Chandigarh. I'm Jyoti Malhotra, and today with this interview, we are launching the Tribune Interview Show, a show where we interview the most interesting, varied, and influential people, not just from here in Chandigarh or Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, and Jammu and Kashmir, which is the footprint where the Tribune is such an important paper, but across the country and indeed across the world. Mr. Tiwari, first of all, welcome to the Tribune.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations, you've just become MP from Chandigarh.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, this is your home, you've grown up in Chandigarh, but what does it feel to be an MP from Chandigarh? You've been MP from Ludhiana, Anandpur Sahib, and now Chandigarh.
Well, Chandigarh is different in many ways because, as you rightly pointed out, I went to school, college, university out here. My father was assassinated in this city. You know, the blood of our family is mingled in the soil of this, of Chandigarh.
Were you there at home when your father was killed? You were at home?
Yes. So we were all at home. So therefore, this place has a special resonance for me. And that is why I always did desire that I should get a chance to represent the place where I spent the first 20 years of my life.
But then you went to Ludhiana and then you went to Anandpur Sahib, and so it's a bit of a circle, isn't it? And lots of people accusing you of being an outsider, of not really knowing Chandigarh. Sure, you went to St. John's School, but you know, you're not a Chandigarh boy anymore.
Well, that's not true at all.
No?
But that's not true at all for the simple reason that notwithstanding the fact that I subsequently got elected first from Ludhiana and then from Sri Anandpur Sahib, and in both places people gave a lot of love and affection. We did a lot of work in those places, but I continue to be rooted here. You know, we have a home.
Rooted here in Chandigarh.
I continue to be rooted here. We have a home in Chandigarh. You know, my mother lived here till 2018. You know, when she passed away, and I was off and on practicing in the Punjab and Haryana High Court also. And so therefore, and the last 5 years when I represented Sri Anandpur Sahib, I was literally doing it out of Chandigarh because from our home in Sector 4, the Sri Anandpur Sahib parliamentary constituency starts at a distance of 500 meters and goes, of course, right up till Phagwada and right up till Una and right up till Fatehgarh Sahib. So it's the largest constituency in Punjab. But yes, you know, I sort of ran it out of our own home.
But your victory in Chandigarh, the campaign that you fought, a really hard-fought campaign, as did your opponent, Sanjay Tandon of the BJP, it was so closely tied. You barely won with 2,504 votes, a really thin margin. I think it's probably the second lowest margin in India. I think the lowest is 47 votes in Mumbai. So what does this mean to you? Does this mean that the people of Chandigarh are divided in their loyalties, that anybody could have won?
Well, I think you need to place this in a perspective. And the perspective is that since 2014, the Congress had lost every election in Chandigarh. So we lost the 2014 Lok Sabha elections, then we lost the corporation elections when they were held, I think, 2 years later in 2016 or 17. Then we again lost the parliament elections in 2019. Then we lost the corporation elections in 2021. So there had been a string of defeats over the past 10 years. And if you look at it from the point of view of 2019, the BJP had won the seat by 60,000 votes. So therefore, first you had to make up that deficit of 60,000 votes.
So you clawed it back, literally.
And then, you know, whatever your victory margin is, your victory margin is. But the important thing is that this is really the first electoral victory that the Indian National Congress has registered in Chandigarh in the past 10 years.
So what do you make of that, Mr. Tiwari? Why do you think the Congress has been so unpopular? And what did you do where, in a sense, that you clawed the vote back, you shifted it back towards you? What happened? Why is the Congress so unpopular in this part of the country?
Well, the Congress is not unpopular in this part of the country. In 2019, in the Lok Sabha elections, we did 8 seats in Punjab, right? And
well, you've done 7 seats now, so not so bad.
And notwithstanding the fact that we didn't do a single seat in Haryana in 2019, but 6 months later, when the assembly elections were held, we almost formed a government in Haryana. So there is, and then we have a government in Himachal Pradesh.
That's right.
So
Well, you barely had a government in Himachal Pradesh, but that's another story.
But with these 4 by-election results, the government is stable. So under those circumstances, the Congress is popular across the northern part of the country. Yes, at places there may have been topical reasons as to why we had those setbacks. And the important thing in this particular election was you had the India Alliance actually working on the ground. And so you had this seamless synergy of all the India partners.
And yet, Mr. Tiwari, Pawan Bansal, senior Congress leader from these parts, from Chandigarh, was openly not supporting you in your campaign.
Well, that's something which he needs to answer for. I mean, I cannot answer for him.
But you agree that he wasn't?
But, well, I am not going to agree or disagree with the hypothesis of your question. But the important thing for me is that the India Alliance, which was an experiment for the first time in terms of actual electoral efficacy on the ground, that worked out very fine. And so therefore you had the Congress, you had the Aam Aadmi Party, you had the left parties, you had the Samajwadi Party, you had the RJD and the other partners in the India Alliance, and they all cooperated in an absolute seamless manner.
So I'm going to ask you about the NDA of Prime Minister Modi's taking the claim, or his claim, for a third term in power. But before I ask you that, what is so special about Chandigarh, in the sense that, there was this Anil Masih episode a few months ago, and the entire country was watching what was going on in Chandigarh when the electoral officer sort of was wrecking the ballot, if you like. So what is it about this city that drives people like you here?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Mr. Anil Masih, because unfortunately the elections to the office of the mayor, the senior deputy mayor and the deputy mayor, the returning officer is one of the nominated councillors. And so it's not really an impartial observer in that, or an impartial official in that sense of the word. The gentleman who got picked up to conduct that election was a card holder of the Bharatiya Janata Party. He was an office bearer of their minority morcha. And
Anil Masih.
Yeah, and yes, and then what he ended up doing was perhaps unprecedented. It has not happened in any election, to the best of my knowledge, across the country, and that is why, for the first time, you really saw an electoral count take place in the Supreme Court itself.
Absolutely.
In my 40-odd years of practice, I have never seen the Supreme Court actually counting ballots, overturning an electoral result and declaring somebody else as the mayor, in this case Mr. Kuldeep Kumar of the Aam Aadmi
It
Party.
was quite unprecedented.
So therefore obviously what he did had shocked the judicial conscience to such an extent that they exercised their special powers under Article 142 of the Constitution, which allows the Supreme Court to do substantial justice, and that's precisely what they did.
So do you think people remembered this episode when they voted for you? Do you think there was something happened? I mean, what is it? Can you pick on one thing or a couple of things?
So therefore, Mr. Anil Masih, or the episode La Affaire Anil Masih, was to the people of Chandigarh symptomatic of the contempt with which the BJP treated a democracy. And therefore, there were real concerns among the people that 2024 may be the last election in this country. There were concerns with regard to the fact that they wanted to abrogate the constitution or replace it with something of their own, which nobody...
Now, surely that's an exaggeration.
It is not an exaggeration.
You need a two-thirds majority in power.
You don't. You see, there is a distinction between amending the constitution and abrogating the constitution.
Okay.
And India is not the first country where this would have happened. In France, I think you now have the Fifth Republic, right? The last time it happened was in 1968. Many other countries, have changed their constitutions lock, stock and barrel.
Well, Mrs. Gandhi changed the constitution during the emergency.
Amended the constitution.
Amended the constitution. So that's also changing the constitution.
So therefore, there are 100 odd amendments which have been carried out to the constitution since the first amendment in 1951. But abrogating the constitution is something entirely different.
Of course.
Right? And therefore, there you are not bound by Kesavdan Bharati, or you are not bound by any other.
Which is the basic structure of the constitution.
Basic structure doctrine. Because then you are not amending the existing constitution. You are doing away with the constitution.
But was there a real fear?
Well, the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir was done away with. It's another matter that it has been upheld by the Supreme Court. But the fact
there's a slight difference, or a big difference. It was a temporary provision. The Constitution of J&K.
The Constitution of J&K wasn't a temporary provision.
Article 370, I'm sorry, forgive me. Article 370 was a temporary provision.
Article 370 was a temporary provision which had perpetuated itself into perpetuity, given the fact that it could not be amended without really summoning the Constituent Assembly. But the Supreme Court dealt with it, and so therefore we will not go.
So the Supreme Court, exactly.
But to your point that a constitution cannot be abrogated, in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, you saw the abrogation of a constitution which was adopted by a Constituent Assembly, if I remember correctly, on the 26th of January 1957. It held the field for so many years, and when Article 370 was abrogated by a procedure which I still hold to be absolutely incorrect, the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir also went.
So let me ask you, Mr. Tiwari, you made a lot of promises in your campaign, one of them being statehood for this Union Territory of Chandigarh. Now, how can you make, this is the capital of Punjab and Haryana, and it's a Union Territory. You can't replicate the Delhi model, surely.
So therefore, first of all, thank you very much for asking that question, because it will allow me to clarify things which I had once earlier done in your paper. What I had suggested was without prejudice to the fact that Chandigarh would continue to remain a Union Territory. Chandigarh would continue to remain the joint capital of Punjab and Haryana, and it was without prejudice to the claims that both states have on Chandigarh. You see, the fundamental problem is the governance model of Chandigarh. So therefore, you have a municipal corporation, which where people participate in that process to a limited extent. There is a very, very large area of governance in which there is no people's participation at all. And that is where most of the problems of Chandigarh lie, with regard to the Chandigarh Housing Board, with regard to the fact that the share-wise sale purchase of property is prohibited, which of course is by a Supreme Court order, but that could have been easily handled, with regard to rights which people in colonies should have, ownership rights which they should have on their houses. Now, this is an area in which there is no public participation at all. So, what I was really suggesting was a model whereby resident welfare associations, civil society organizations and other people could be statutorily empowered in order to participate in this domain, which is completely opaque and which is completely run by the bureaucracy, and which is the cause of most of the legacy problems that Chandigarh has. So, I was not suggesting a model which was either a city-state on the lines of the National Capital Territory of Delhi, or even Puducherry, which has a special status under Article 239 of the Constitution. What I was really implying was that there needs to be a greater statutorily enhanced people's participation so that these problems can be addressed, because unfortunately, you see, the bureaucracy is...
But can you do that now? Your government is not in power.
Well, in the sense, if I am able to convince people who may be running the Modi government, that these are things which are in the interest of the city, it obviously can be done. For example, one thing which needs to be done, and which my colleague Mr. Jairam Ramesh made a public commitment when he came here, is that the Chandigarh Municipal Corporation Act or the Punjab Municipal Corporation Act, which is extended to Chandigarh, needs to be amended so that you can have a directly elected mayor for 5 years, right? Number two, the anti-defection law needs to be extended to the municipal corporations and to other local bodies where you contest on a party symbol, because every year you see this spectacle of corporators who are crossing the floor, twice or thrice in order to,
so the anti-defection law doesn't apply to them?
The anti-defection law just applies to Parliament and to the legislative assemblies. But you see, at the grassroots level, which is the first point of contact which the citizens or the electorate has with democratic institutions, you have this wanton wholesale Ayaram Gayarams which are going on. You will see for yourself, come December, there's a mandi which gets set up whereby people are going over, coming back, going over again. This needs to stop, and the only way to stop this is that if you have a directly elected mayor for 5 years, who's properly empowered, and is then accountable for his performance and has enough time and enough powers at his disposal whereby he can address civic issues in a holistic manner, because now what you have is a mayor every 1 year.
So clearly this is a very different constituency from, say, constituencies in a state. It's really like a super corporation in a sense. It's not a city-state like Delhi, but I suppose it has its own characteristics, right?
See, the thing is, Chandigarh was conceived as a union territory only for 5 years. On the 1st of January 1966, when the trifurcation of Punjab took place, and and Punjab in its current form, right, which was truncated, came into existence, and Haryana came into existence, and some areas went to Himachal Pradesh, and there was a conflict with regard to the status of Chandigarh. It was then made a union territory for 5 years, from the 1st of January 1966 till the 31st of March 1971. Now, that is a status quo which got perpetuated into perpetuity. But its governance model was
kept with the times.
No. Its governance model was only to cater to a contingency which people at that point in time, or the decision makers at that point in time, felt would end in 5 years. And that didn't happen. And nobody in Chandigarh now wants to change the union territory character of the city, because you get a lot of
certain character.
Because you get a lot of money from the central government, right? So therefore, Chandigarh does not have the problems which other cities have. Like, for example, I represented Ludhiana in Parliament. One of the biggest constraints that city had in terms of improving its urban infrastructure was paucity of funds, because you know how indebted.
So Chandigarh doesn't have that.
Chandigarh doesn't have that because it gets its money from the central government
as a UT,
and so therefore there is a stake or a vested interest in not changing that status quo. But as a consequence of that, the unadministered or the non-participatory governance area in Chandigarh is so large and it is so opaque that people then have difficulties, and all of them which I've spelt out from, for example.
Is this where the poor and the underprivileged?
That's right. Live? That's absolutely.
And a lot of them voted for you, Mr. Tiwari. So perhaps you have a stake in improving their lot.
Yes. So, like for example, the simplest thing to do, there is something called a Lal Dora or a Lal Lakir. Now, this is an area around a village, right, where the panchayat laws earlier would apply, and your building bylaws, etc., would not apply. Now, this particular line was drawn maybe 50 years back, 75 years back, 100 years back. Populations have expanded there since then.
That's right.
People have built
families,
people have built outside that. Now, this is not being regularized. The question is, you can't break it down. This is brownfield, this is not greenfield. So you need to find a way of regularizing it by charging maybe a nominal compounding fee. Now, this doesn't require rocket science. But the reason why it has not happened over all these decades is primarily because the bureaucracy is continuously in transition. Some officers from Punjab, some officers from Haryana, some officers from the central government.
So you have
since 1983, when terrorism was at its peak, I think 1984, the governor of Punjab was designated as the administrator of Chandigarh, primarily to ensure seamless security coordination. And that status quo continues to hold the field. So you have this nightmare of multiple authorities, multiple laws which have not been updated, and you have a citizenry which obviously benefits from the Union Territory status of Chandigarh, but is equally impacted by the fact that a non-accountable bureaucracy is not interested in doing anything at all.
So you have to then clearly crack the whip on the bureaucracy. But let me
Jyoti, may I just interrupt you for a moment? This requires legislative solutions, right? It requires an amendment to the Punjab Municipal Corporation Act. It requires some imaginative thinking how to increase people's participation in this bureaucratic controlled domain without disturbing the status quo, which is Chandigarh as a union territory, and the claims.
Well, clearly you have to bring both the centre and the state. So in which case the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP, and you have to work with all of them. So you in the Congress Party, the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab, and the BJP in the centre.
You've seen instances whereby there has been multi-partisanship at display in various parliamentary committees, even in Parliament. So therefore, I think this is not an issue which benefits the Congress Party. This is something which, if it works out well, would benefit the people of Chandigarh.
Of course.
Right? And eventually, everybody should have a stake in ensuring that there is updation of people's participation in the governance process.
And you as its MP, you as its newly elected
MP-elect.
MP-elect, absolutely, you haven't taken oath yet. But Mr. Tiwari, let me bring you to the centre, and congratulations, your party has done extraordinarily well, 99 seats in the parliament. Well, the BJP has got 240, so more than double of you. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi will stake claim to power for a third time. He's rivaling the record of your former Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, three consecutive terms in power. However, there is a certain what's going on in Delhi? You should know. Tell us.
I have no clue at all because
of course I
was bogged down. I was bogged down.
I don't believe that for a second.
I was bogged down for 45 days out here,
sure.
And I've spent the remaining days preparing for the counting and then the aftermath of the counting. But as I can see it, look, it is definitely a moral defeat for the BJP. Because you were tom-tomming 400.
But they are going to be in power.
Yeah, but they are going to be in power on two crutches. And those two crutches...
The TDP?
And those two crutches are really very unreliable clutches because one is going to demand its pound of flesh in many, many more ways than one. And the other is notorious for somersaulting without even batting an eyelid.
So which one is which? Tell me.
So therefore,
what do you think the TDP is going to demand?
Well, I think the TDP has been demanding from 2014 onwards, ever since the separate state of Andhra Pradesh came into existence, a special package, right? So therefore, if you give a special package to Andhra Pradesh, Bihar has the same demand for many, many
well, the Nitish Kumar has already demanded a special package for
right?
Bihar.
So therefore, that's been in the works for a very long time. Then if you give special packages to them, where does it leave a state like Punjab, which has a debt overhang due to the...
Punjab for the moment doesn't matter, Mr. Tiwari, because you are not being counted in the overall. You have 7 seats. The Congress Party is not...
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is purely from a
governance... matter of principle.
From a governance point of view, when you talk about special packages, what happens to hugely indebted states which are not indebted because of their own doing, but also because of a national security imperative whose costs they paid in blood and
are you saying to me that you're worried that the TDP and Nitish Kumar's party, the JDU, the Janata Dal United, could may not remain with the BJP for long?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying is
Surely you're not concerned about that.
Well, there are two very wobbly crutches, and this parliament is going to be a very, very different parliament. The India
In what
Alliance.
way?
Well, the India Alliance is 230. So, for starters, you cannot expel members of parliament like you did when you passed the criminal laws. Right, lock, stock and barrel, you expelled everybody and you passed those criminal laws without even a discussion, and just because opposition MPs were demanding accountability for the security breach which happened on 13th of December 2023. With such large numbers on the opposition benches, you are not going to be able to do that.
What happens
You will not be able to pass legislation which requires 2/3 majorities. You will not be able to steamroll democratic.
Like what?
Well, in the sense that if you
like the Uniform Civil Code?
Well, the Uniform Civil Code, if you can, we want to take it as an example, but anything which requires a 2/3 majority is now will compel the Modi government, or the third iteration of the Modi government, to work with the opposition across the aisle. You will not be able to stonewall a discussion on China, which you did for 4 long years, in which I personally, I think, gave an adjournment motion every day from the September of 2020. You will not be able to stop questions on sensitive subjects. For example, 66 of my questions on China between September 2020 and the February of 2024 were not admitted on specious grounds of national security. You know, if you cannot...
What does that mean?
They were disallowed. So
what were you asking?
No, we were asking questions as to whether, the Chinese have come into our territory. We were asking questions that a senior officer had written a paper for the DGP IGP's conference, in which he had said that 26 out of our 65 patrolling points in eastern Ladakh are inaccessible to the Indian security forces. These are extremely germane and sensitive questions.
And what happened?
Nothing. You just don't admit the questions.
So you didn't get any answers to the questions?
Forget answers. You will only get an answer if a question is admitted. You just don't admit questions.
But what about in the Standing Committee of Parliament and the Consultative Committee of Parliament?
In the Standing Committee of Parliament, to the best of my knowledge, there was not a single substantive discussion on China.
Why not?
Because the government just won't play ball. They were not willing to answer anything. And the opposition benches were depleted. The numbers were much less.
So you couldn't make a point.
Yeah,
you couldn't push your point.
So this is now a resurgent opposition, whereby 99 for the Congress, and if there's a by-election, hopefully it goes up to 100 in the course of some months, because obviously Mr. Gandhi would be resigning one of his seats.
Right.
So therefore there would be a
Rahul
by-election.
Gandhi, yeah.
And then you have the Samajwadi Party at 37, you have the TDP, you have the Trinamool Congress, you have the DMK, right? So there's a sizable cohort on the opposition benches, which you will not be able to ignore this time.
So do you feel much more empowered, do you think?
Well, I think it should restore a balance in our polity, a balance which was absent over the past 10 years. And I am hopeful that it will have a salutary effect in terms of even safeguarding the autonomy of our institutions.
But why do you think I'm not asking you the exit poll question and why all 5 exit polls that we carried in our paper in the Tribune were completely way off the mark. My question to you is that even if it's 100 MPs...
The exit polls, unfortunately, is a completely, it's a completely rigged poll.
What do you mean?
Well, how can you get it so wrong? Right? In the sense that if you've empirically data-driven an exit poll, right, you cannot be so off the mark.
It's human error, Mr. Tiwari.
It can't be a human error across the board.
Who is it being rigged by?
I don't know who's it being, but
what are your thoughts? Who is it being rigged by?
But these exit polls.
It's not fair to accuse
well, tell me,
agencies that spend a lot of money sampling the population.
Tell me, Jyoti, then how is it that systematically over a period of time they get it wrong always?
No, they don't get it wrong always. They got it wrong this time. They certainly got it wrong. They don't get it wrong always.
In many state polls, you get it wrong.
Okay, anyway, my
That's
question
another
is,
matter.
yeah, so it's not an exit poll question.
Well,
When Rahul Gandhi,
according to me, you know, it's a complete mugs game, and that's why I've never ever participated in an exit poll discussion in my entire life as a spokesman.
okay, so tell me, you will get 100 MPs very soon when Rahul Gandhi gives up one of the two seats, Raebareli or Wayanad. Now, 100 MPs, so I can ask that question in two ways. 100 MPs is not good enough for 240 BJP MPs in the parliament.
Count the India Bloc MPs, because you see, when you count the India Bloc MPs,
Well, that's nearly 300 of the NDA then. The 300 of the NDA
minus
and the
243 of the India Bloc,
Yeah.
right? Those that's almost close to a halfway split in Parliament, right? So therefore, you will not be able to steamroll and ramrod your agenda through. You will have to then work with people across the aisle. It's not going to be what you were able to do to a lesser extent from 2014 to 19, and to a much larger extent from 2019 to 2024. And I don't think it will be the first time that the Prime Minister personally would be experimenting with running a coalition government. And I don't think his mental makeup is really of the kind whereby he would be able to have the nimbleness and the suppleness and the adroitness to be able to negotiate a coalition.
So two questions, Mr. Tiwari. The first is, what is this message to you? What does this mean that the people of India, and UP for example, have voted against the BJP? In Faizabad, the BJP lost, the Samajwadi Party won. Is that emblematic of something? I don't know what.
Well, it is emblematic of the fact that the people of India are sick of divisiveness. They are sick of this corrosive level of debate to which this election or the entire political discourse has been brought to. They do not want polarization to rule their lives. They want real bread and butter issues to come to the fore, things which are hurting them. So, in many senses of the word, the 2024 verdict is really a moral defeat for the NDA BJP.
But the Prime Minister is a very smart man, Mr. Tiwari. You've seen him over the last several decades. He's able to adjust with the tide. You know, he understands. He understood Gujarat. He understands Delhi. So he will. Do you believe that he will change? Do you think he will respond to this message?
Well, ultimately, it would really depend upon how the allies in this government would be willing to digest polarization and divisiveness and the kind of hate mongering which has been going on for the past 10 years. Are they going to be a part and parcel of that process if it continues into 2024 and beyond? And so, in many senses of the word, if they are able to put their foot down, you will have a government which will have to focus on real bread and butter issues. And number two, of course, you have a far more resurgent opposition which would keep the government on its toes.
So you think the TDP and the JDU, Nitish Kumar and Chandrababu Naidu, you think they will keep Prime Minister Modi on his toes?
Well, in the sense that that is what they really should be doing. And eventually, as I said, how reliable or how wobbly those crutches are, you know, that time will only tell over the next couple of months.
Okay, so last couple of questions. How many months or how many years do you give this parliament? You think it will survive the 5 years?
Well, the UPA ran a coalition for 10 years. There are many states in this country where coalition governments run their entire course. So it would really depend upon the Prime Minister and the Bharatiya Janata Party whether they really want to run a coalition government or not.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's early days as yet, because as I see it, you know, now everything is going to be contested. We'll see as to how the cabinet formation or the government formation takes place. Then you will have an election to the post of speaker. They will have to have a deputy speaker this time, unlike last time when they didn't have a deputy speaker for 5 long years, which was a mockery of the constitution, because the post of the deputy speaker is intrinsic to the constitution of India. So all these things where you rode roughshod over institutions, you rode roughshod over over democratic practices and traditions. That will not happen now.
Why is it that the UPA didn't stake claim? Do you think it was?
Well, I think
you didn't have the numbers.
Well, I think it was a sensible thing to do, right? Okay. So therefore, when you had a situation whereby the BJP at 240 had the support of these 5 or 7 people, okay, and it's not the TDP and the BJP and the JDU alone. There are smaller parties like, for example, Eknath Shindé's Shiv Sena and others are there. So it will not be only these two demanding their pound of flesh. It will also be all the other smaller players, the ones with 7s and the 8s and the 5s, who would also be equally assertive. So it's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy for Prime Minister Modi.
Well, I think it's not going to be easy, and they will have to make a lot of adaptation. They will have to make a leap of faith and really understand that the diversity of India is finally going to be in full bloom in the current parliament.
Absolutely. The last question. The Prime Minister has invited the leaders of South Asia, except Pakistan, to attend his swearing in. What do you make of it?
Well, I think in 2014, he had even invited Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif came for his swearing in. 2019, it happened in the aftermath of Balakot, in the standoff that we had with Pakistan, after the Pulwama terror attack. And 5 years down the line, I think the message which the Modi government is trying to send out is that there has been no change in their approach towards Pakistan between 2019 and today. And so therefore, whether that is good, bad or ugly is for them to really decipher. But the fact remains that after 10 years in government, if you are inviting the same set of persona that you did in 2014, with the exception of one, then what is your claim of being a player on the world stage? Ultimately, if after 10 years, it's only your neighborhood that you're able to get together.
Well, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor of the US
Jake Sullivan is not the President of the United States of America, and
he has a campaign to run. He's got elections around the corner.
Well, in the sense that...
But should the Prime Minister of Pakistan be invited?
Well, that's a call which the government has to take.
What do you think?
Well, I think there comes a time when you really need to make a decision as to whether you will continue to be bogged down by the legacy of partition in the case of Pakistan and the legacy of unsettled borders qua China. Because as long as India does not find a modus vivendi whereby they are able to break out of this quagmire, India will never really be able to punch to its weight on the international stage. I think since 1947, these unsettled relationships have held India back, and therefore a concerted effort should be made without compromising national security in any manner possible to see that India is able to punch to its full potential on the international stage, which clearly does not seem to be the case, because if the needle has not moved in terms of invitations between 2014 and 2024, that's a hell of a reality check.
Mr. Tiwari, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to the Tribune. You've been forthright and frank as always, and we appreciate you coming here. You are a Chandigarh boy, which is why the Tribune is very special for you, and vice versa.
Well, we grew up reading this paper. Maybe this was the first newspaper that I started reading when I started reading a newspaper. So yes, the Tribune has a very special place for us, in the region.
Thank you, and thank you all so much for watching. This is a new show that we've launched with Manish Tiwari called the Tribune Interview, which gives Punjab, Chandigarh and the Tribune a window to the world, and vice versa. Thank you again for your time.